Hey there berries, welcome to patch 10.19 support tier list. I hope you guys have been keeping safe. Now, this is the patch that is going to be played at Worlds. If you don't know what Worlds is, it's a big tournament with all the big pro teams and they fight off to come first place. Wow, amazing. So this is the patch that will be played on, and I believe that starts in like a week from now. Something like that, at least anyway. So it's all very exciting stuff going on. Maybe some new meta shifts will happen just before the end of season 10. I'll keep my eye on the situation. I like watching Worlds, so I'll be reviewing any support surprises that will come up through there. But at the moment, as of today, 10.19 doesn't give anything to supports. There's not one support direct change in this patch. Last patch had like Guardian nerf, but they've just completely forgotten that support has existed, I think, for the last two patches. But what we'll do is we'll do a little, when I get time to look at the tier list, reflect on the previous week or two, and make some minor adjustments, which I have done. Not completely the same tier list as last patch, considering the changes. You could say that this patch is still a support nerf because AD carries in general are getting, they're getting punished a lot. There's one or two AD carries that are getting minor buffs, but on the whole, you've got Caitlyn big nerf, Lucian nerf, Aphelios buff, and I'm just trying to jog my memory in case there's anything else. There's a big Vayne actually alt AD buff. Oh, and also Senna AD carry is getting nerfed as well. So overall, a lot of the meta AD carry champions in Soda Q are getting nerfed, which is a little bit of a shame, because supports are directly affected by how strong the ADs are. So like if the AD carries overall fall down a little bit, that means the mid and the top and the jungle are going to be overall stronger. So as a whole, probably I would count this as another support nerf this patch, indirect. But yeah, as I said, no actual direct changes to any support or even to things like runes or items. Now, if you're new to my tier list, what we do is we have 5 different tiers. And we creep up, we go into more detail on the ones higher up, and I go through what's viable for solo queue. This tier 5 I don't think recall has ever changed ever, so we'll probably just skip past it pretty quickly. If you see a champion there that you play as a support in that tier 5 section, I'm very disappointed in you, and you should reconsider. If you're thinking about climbing, at least anyway. If you're having fun and whatever, you can do Tryndamere support for Leica. Right, now moving into the tier 4, we had a few nudge ups, I believe. The one biggest change in this tier 4 is the Alistar being dropped down from tier 3 to tier 4. I just think he's absolutely useless, even in the roaming sense at the moment. Once new season comes through, some new roaming items maybe might come through, or something might come for the Alistar, but honestly right now it's just not worth playing at all. There's better roamers, there's better tanks, and honestly just generally pretty useless. Say if like Draven and like with the Lucian nerf that impacts him slightly, if there was some more aggressive AD carry buffs this patch, Alistar would actually be quite an interesting pick, because that isn't there. Honestly, AD carry as a whole is generally on the weaker side, so yeah, Alistar won't be able to provide you as much as you would like in the early laning phase where he's strongest. Everything else though, I did a Swain game recently. It wasn't a perfect Swain game. I believe we won the game. I think we did. Probably put a video link somewhere, card maybe up there, of that game. I'm not overall too impressed. Again, I just did a quick recap on the Swain as when he had that mini rework where he lost his movement speed and he had his Q changed and the W range increase. I did another game on him after a few weeks of not playing him, just to make sure everything was kind of like the same in terms of badness, and yeah, I'm not happy with the Swain and the movement speed passive. Like, people underrate how much movement speed is in League. You got the -5 movement speed meme nerfs and stuff like that, but the one hitting Swain is pretty bad. Especially when you're level 6, it's much more difficult to get into ult range. You could take something like a phase rush instead, but then you have less damage in laning phase, which is like the whole point of the Swain, is the damage between like level 1 and level 5 is meant to be pretty huge. So pretty disappointed. And just honestly, he could probably use a revert. I think reverting the mistakes that they've done with, they haven't increased Swain's play rate at all. In fact, they probably made them less because of this change, and it's not very good for the support role, at least anyway. Everything else there, if you do see a top lane or a mid lane champion in that tier 4 or a jungler that you're used to playing and you want to convert over to the support role, by all means you can do that, just to make sure you learn the role and things like that before you maybe take something a little bit more outside your comfort zone, but higher up in the tier list. But yeah, other than that, that should be it for that. Let's move up to tier 3. I'm going to get into some more juicy stuff here. As you can probably see, there's already a dramatic change. So we've got Senna in a tier 3 now. I'll put Brom, Karma, Thresh, Morgana, Pyke, Gragas, Brand, Rakan, and Taric in tier 3. I think we'll talk about the biggest one. I think the Senna into tier 3 is probably going to be the biggest potential question mark for a lot of people. I think it's got to the stage where there is an AD carry Senna nerf. It doesn't really affect support unless you're wave clearing. You might get like 1 or 2 less souls in a game. That's not the reason why she's tier 3. I just feel like overall, over the course of time, as an actual support, I feel like Riot have lost their way. This champion was designed to be support first in mind, and honestly, the last 2 months have been her primarily as AD carry. I don't know if that would change at Worlds if they'll reduce the play rate on Senna, because you know she's still very strong with the Manamune build, but I'm not happy playing her really. She's just genuinely too fragile. I'd say the only case where Senna really does feel nice is if you've got an AP carry in the bot lane, or if you've got like, say if you've got like 3 to 4 APs on your team, you're having a Senna as a support pick is actually really nice. But that's honestly the only situation where I would say, yeah, okay, you can pick Senna. In that situation, in that specific situation, she excels. Maybe if you're against like a Janna lane or someone extremely passive early, you can get the soul stacks up. But against any mage, any hard engaged tank support, and honestly against any aggressive jungler, you're going to have a really tough time getting much out of that laning phase. So overall, do not really recommend playing Senna too much at the moment. As I said, there are some situations where you can still play her. Let's have a look. I think I also put Rakan up from tier 4 to tier 3, and also Taric as well. That got moved from tier 4 to tier 3 as well. I think those are all the biggest changes from the previous patch. So I got a message from the Rakan mains Reddit. Shout out to them, I guess. They weren't too happy that I put Rakan in tier 4 basically. And I understood some of their concerns. I would go as far as tier 3.5, but if you're doing any 0.5s, they should still be in the tier 3. So hey, just shout out to that subreddit. Put Rakan in tier 3. Shut up now. Taric we have in tier 3. So he's really good into other tanks. With AD carry damage generally being a little bit lower this patch as well, you're going to have a better chance getting your level 6 ultimate off in a team fight, skirmish in the bot lane. So that's kind of nice. He's just genuinely really good if they are moving into you, the enemy that is. If you're looking to actually engage with your stun, it's really difficult in solo queue, because you would need to put a bastion, your W, on somebody and then rely that they land the stun via you. It can get a bit messy in cases, so most of the time you'd be relying on your own stun to make that happen. But I think Taric is generally a really nice pick against tanks. Against mages, you'll get poked down really, really badly, and unless you've got an aggressive AD carry and you somehow manage to catch them out with a stun, that's going to be your only opportunity to get something in that lane. And against enchanters as well, you're very easy to be poked down, but if you manage to get a stun catch up, maybe you can make something happen there. But against like Nautilus and like Leona, Alistair, any tank engage, he does a really good job against. Also, any teams that are that don't have as much burst as well, because then it will allow your ultimate to actually fall down. So that's there's a few potentials to play Taric. Much like in the Senna case, and honestly much like in all the champions in tier 3, there are situations where they are the right pick, but they're not the right pick like every game. Whereas stuff in the tier 2 and tier 1 you could probably one trick and get away with. I wouldn't recommend one tricking anything in the tier 3 section. But yeah, you have a good chance with Taric. And is there anything I wanted to add to that? Not particularly. No, I think we'll leave it there. I don't want to ramble on too much for this one. Let's go up to tier 2. So tier 2, as you can see, there's more changes there as well. So we've got Sona, Lux, Blitzcrank, Zyra, Yuumi, Nami, and Nautilus. Now that last one might surprise a lot of people. The Sona one probably won't surprise too many. It was a tough one putting. Let's start with Sona. It was a tough one putting Sona in between like tier 1 and tier 2. I don't think she's enough for 1.5. All I would say is the nerfs that she hit were a tad bit more than I thought they would feel like. If you're going to one-trick pony Sona, if you already are, you probably already noticed the effects of that slightly, but I think she's still an incredibly strong enchanter, right? Anything in tier 2 is still really, really strong. Just that, it did take a decent chunk of power away from her. She's definitely on the upper end on this tier 2, I would say. Still a very incredible powerful team fighter. Just in lane, kind of, don't want to say irrelevant, but irrelevant. Laning phase is definitely a struggle, but as always with Sona, if you can manage to get to that magical level 11 mark and you're in team fights, she does a really, really good job buffing up your entire team. AP Lux still tier 2, stand by it completely. I'm willing to die making sure that Lux stays in tier 2. So I uploaded a video recently where I had a few teammates even flame me for going AP, and we managed to show them up a little bit. I think AP Lux is really, really good. You've got a lot of situations that you can use her in. What I would probably say is, now that Caitlyn did get a nerf this patch, her play rate will probably end up going up a little bit because she won't be banned as often. And even with those nerfs, Caitlyn Lux is still going to be like a really, really godly combo there. But she generally works really, really nicely with virtually any AD carry. I say virtually, like anything that does a lot of poke, you can go a bit aggressive with her, but I probably wouldn't play her with a hyper carry like a Vayne, who would need a little bit more protection in the laning phase. And you could probably do Ardent Sentinel and Lux, but with the build that I do, I wouldn't bother with it, to be honest. But it's always an option. Blitzcrank, the bane of most people, particularly in gold and under. Still can do quite well in high ELO, but not as played as much as in the lower brackets, but still a very, very scary champion for other people to be playing against, and it's a tilter. Just generally a really solid pick. I will say Sivir has received a buff this patch, so we could start seeing some more Sivers. So always pick Blitzcrank when you know what you're up against. Don't pick him blind, but if you know what you're up against, there's no spell shields or no other tank on the bot lane, you generally got an easy time depending on your AD carry. Zyra, tier 2, solid mage. Not as much damage as Lux, but provides a lot more utility in terms of extra slows. Leandry's Rylai's and Morello, like just the extra utility of having his extra slows and the Grievous Wounds option there as well. Overall better at killing tankier targets, because of that, as opposed to the Lux, who's much better at dealing with squishy targets. But don't be fooled, Zyra can definitely deal a lot of damage to those squishy targets as well. Just overall, as I said, just much more utility. AoE knock-up, like if you got like a Yasuo on your team as well, that can be quite nice, or some other AoE overlap. But yeah, just a really solid mage, and she's been like that for a really long time. Yuumi, not really scary in lane at all, but if there's someone on your team that gets particularly fed, you can always ditch your AD carry to go onto that person. Just a really good snowballing champion, but it is flipping a coin and hoping someone on your team actually does well, otherwise you're useless. But let's be fair, you'd probably be useless anyway if no one on your team was probably able to carry anyway. Nami, still tier 2, keeping her tier 2 for a while now. I think that's a respectable position for her to be in. I'm happy that I've put her in tier 2 from a couple of patches ago. I think we'll keep her there for now. And Nautilus, we left till last. So he's crept up the tier list up a little bit. I'm willing to admit that I was possibly slightly too harsh on him. And what I'll probably say is that he's the lowest on the tier 2 right now. If anyone was going to move to tier 3, it would be the Nautilus on tier 2. So I've changed my mind on him a little bit, just because, this is going to sound weird because of the Alistair, but because the roaming is just cleaner, and probably a little bit more important, considering the AD carries are generally a little bit more yucky right now. Now, it's a much better pick than the Nautilus because it has way better catch potential and much better CC, crowd control. So if you have something like a Kaiser, probably the best pairing with Nautilus is a Kaiser, and Kaiser is a pick that hasn't been changed and is starting to become a little bit more popular. I think that's probably my reasoning behind it. At least, you know, in Diamond low masters, there's been a lot more Kaiser players recently, especially with all the Caitlyn bans. So Nautilus does a really good job at providing 3 passive stacks to the Kaiser at level 6. So you got his passive, his Q, and the ultimate all provide a very quick 3 crowd control stacks for Kaiser, and just her tapping W equals 1 massive burst damage there already. But in general, he's really good at slipping away from ganks if you hook towards a wall. So he's one of the few, if not like really only, hard engaged tanks that can actually get away from a gank. Whereas if you're playing something like Leona and you're a little bit too far up, you're probably dead. Whereas Nautilus has the option to try and hook to a wall in time. It won't necessarily save you every time, but it gives you that option at least anyway. So yeah, I'm keeping an eye on him. I'll probably do some games for him for YouTube coming up in this week. But yeah, I'll make sure I'll keep you guys updated on that one on the Nautilus and nail that one in to make sure that I'm happy keeping him in tier 2. And without a doubt, let's have a look at tier 1. Only one change really. Well, it's the swap. It was the swap with the Sona and the Bard for this one. We've got Leona, Lulu, Soraka, Janna, and Bard. So I decided, I'm going to talk about the Bard pick because that's the only one that really got changed there. So the Bard pick, I've decided, is that I really should have never had him in tier 2. I've always in my head considered him as probably the strongest solo queue champion to play if you're very high mechanically and roaming gifted, should I say, like myself. And that's a bit egoistic to say, but he's one of my favorite champions, and you do need to be very aware on the map at all times, and you do need to be able to land skill shots in order to play this champion. But if you can do that, he's very fun as well. He's very unique and very fun in League of Legends. So the main reason why I kept him at tier 2, because I'm assuming the majority of people watching my tier list are anywhere between unranked and gold. That's just the way it is, just with how the player base lines up. So because if you are in, particularly in iron, bronze, don't look at Bard. This isn't like to BM you or anything like that. It's just because he is such a high mechanical champion that you would honestly be kind of wasting your time learning how to play him at that point. I would recommend you just build yourself up with the other champions, get used to the mechanics, and then once you're around silver, gold, then start looking at Bard as a potential way to honestly solo carry your games. So I've always been kind of hesitant to recommend him too much because I know for a lot of people it's just not an option, but he's so good. He's just so good in solo queue, and there have been so many fights where my ulti, the 4-man, 5-man stasis ultis, and then everyone just then jumps on top of them. Even when we're behind, it can just change an entire game. So if you can do your timing with your cosmic bindings, your Q stun out of the stasis as well, you're going to have to do a lot of practice in practice tool for that, but it will pay off. It'll work out. I mean, if you do feel like you're mechanically, you have good mechanics and you're in the lower ELO, but your macro, which is moving around the map and planning for objectives, is really bad, you could always maybe throw yourself at this champion and just use it to force yourself to learn how to play around the map more. But just don't be too downhearted if you're, you know, how can I say, not doing too well. Just noticed Twitch chat popped up there. I'm not actually streaming right now, so demons sneaking into the video accidentally. And then you got the 4 other champions as well. You got the 3 top enchanters at the moment with the Janna, the Soraka, and the Lulu. Lulu, especially with this Vayne buff, is going to be really interesting to see how strong that is, because Lulu is generally only paired with a Twitch, Cockmore, or Vayne. Vayne is much more popular than any one of those other champions. So with Vayne getting quite a strong attack damage buff on her ultimate, it's going to make that combination quite scary. So if you see a Lulu, get ready for the Vayne in champion selection coming this patch. Soraka, one of the most aggressive enchanters in lane, and it's very difficult to stop, and it forces everyone to buy Grievous Wounds early. Just very, very high punishing. Janna, really good at disengaging. The only thing I would say is, okay, so what I say is, like, for example, in tier 3, how I remember when I put Rakan down, people accuse me of like hating Rakan, and that's why I put him down in the tier list. That's not true. The one true champion I kind of hate playing is Janna. But I respect the fact that she's in tier 1, but she is pretty boring to play in my opinion. But she's still very good against, you know, the hard engage. She's very good at disengaging those champions. She's generally an okay like buffer for 1 AD, but generally you're relying on the enemy team to make the mistakes, and then Janna then can disengage and highlight them, and then your team turns it around. It's not one of those champions here in this tier 1 where you can like dictate the game flow, so it's kind of unique in that regard, but she is very good at what she does. And then finally we've got Leona. Leona is still one of the strongest tanks in the entire game. Stronger than Nautilus purely because she has a very, very low cooldown on her ultimate. She's tankier than Nautilus, and she has more hard crowd control and on a much shorter cooldown. So the only real like kind of short crowd control, like hard crowd control, when I say hard, it's like the person literally can't do anything, so they're immobilized and they can't cast any abilities. So Nautilus is passive, that roots somebody, but they can still cast abilities while they're rooted. The Sona stun prevents that as well, so that's the reason. And she can like whack that stun down multiple times in a team fight depending if she survives. So that's the only reason why she's like higher. Also she can potentially multi crowd control, hard crowd control a couple of people in a team fight as well with her ultimate. So that's when it becomes much more of a bigger deal than an Orsa. So overall, in terms of actual power that she brings into skirmishes and team fights, Leona's just a bit higher than Nautilus at the moment. I will say that Nautilus can probably highlight one person to be picked off much easier just because of how the hook works. But Leona, in terms of like the actual fight going on in itself, she's much stronger in if the fight like lasts longer than like 3 seconds and your team can follow up. Well, I hope this tier list helps you. Congratulations if you made it through to the end without skipping right to tier 1. I know there's a lot of people that do that. I'm aware of that people just skip to tier 1. How dare you? It's fine. I don't blame the people that do, if you are one of them. Just do a quick shout out here. Got some new merch in. Good timing, actually. It arrived today. I will say your top won't be see-through like my jumper right now. It's because of the green screen messing it up in a way. Wait, a little bit. Look, Tarek is seeping through my my jumper right now. But we've got some new very awesome merch, and actually at the back it says Berry Bush, which you would know if you're on the live stream over at twitch.tv/Bizzleberry. But as always, if you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in the comment section down below. I do read pretty much like 99% of all YouTube comments. I don't reply to all of them though. Sometimes I do a little heart on a few of them, and sometimes I do leave an actual constructive reply on some legitimate questions. But the best way to actually contact me directly is either on the live stream or on discord.gg/Bizzleberry. It's much easier to get the information out there if you guys want that. And also there's like 2,800 support players on that server as well. So if you need support help, then the support team is waiting for you for your questions. There's a lot of people there. Other than that, I don't think there's anything too much else to add. I will say I'm getting ready for Wild Rift when that comes out. I'm very excited for it. I don't know any news about it soon, but I know it's like it's soon, right? I don't actually know any specific information, but when Wild Rift does come out, if you don't know what Wild Rift is, it's League of Legends mobile/console version, and it's gonna have its like own client and everything. It's gonna be beautiful. When that does get released, I'm planning on keeping my League content still. 1 League, 1 Wild Rift, something like that at least every single day. And hopefully you guys that are watching League can still understand the Wild Rift stuff, because there should be a lot of familiarity, you know, with the same champions. Not necessarily the same items, which is kind of cool, but the same champions at least anyway, with a slight twist on some of their abilities. Like, for example, Ash Arrow, you can actually like direct where it goes. It looks pretty cool. So I'm pretty excited about Wild Rift. And yeah, as always, stay very awesome. Take care, guys, and I'll see you in 2 weeks' time for another tier list, I guess.